Hello, this is John Sahun from InsiderSentiment.com, and today I will talk about what signal are insiders sending right now in July 2025, and what are some notable examples that sort of exemplify this. And so let's jump in. I'm going to talk about this article called "Company Insiders Now Are Bearish to the Extreme," and this is from Mark Hulbert at MarketWatch, and this is a recent article, just a couple days ago. And so this article basically is talking about what the title says that insiders are now sending a very bearish signal. And so this is using our data from insidersentiment.com. This is the insider sentiment tracker. And you can see that the July number is much lower than the rest of the figures in this chart. And so what this is measuring basically is the share of companies that are experiencing net insider buying. And so basically, the lowest, a very low share of companies are experiencing net insider buying. Most of them are sellers at this time. And this is lower than any other point in the 10-year history, as you can see from the graph. But this is not a final month-end number, so that could revise upwards still, that July figure. And if I scroll up, you can see that he also writes in April, in contrast, they were bullish. And you can see um, that corresponds to this little local maximum here where the insider sentiment numbers went above the 10-year average. And that corresponds to the sort of period when there was a lot of tariff uncertainty. And insiders were bullish at that time, and we discussed that at that time. And I'll leave a video link in the description to that. And so that's sort of the takeaway here is that insiders are sending a bearish signal. And so now let's talk about some specific examples. So this is the firm specific insider transactions tab here on our dashboard. And this tab allows you to see um, certain insider transactions uh, plotted against the stock price, which is useful for seeing patterns that can arise. And so if I pull up our first example, Amazon, what we're looking at here is the stock price as the gray squiggly line, and these bars, pink bars, are sales, and the bars are very thin because the bars represent just one day of sales, and there's 5 years on this graph here, so hopefully you can see those. But basically, the takeaway is that there's a lot of very small pink bars representing sales here, and they're much larger ones here. And so that suggests that Amazon insiders have really picked up the selling in the last year. And if we look at the cumulative net shares traded, we can quantify this. So we just traded out the closing price for the cumulative net shares traded, and from the start of 2020 until February 2024, there's about 7.8 million shares sold, and that number drops to 97 million. So basically 90 million more shares were sold in the past year versus the previous 4 years before that. So that's quite considerable. I think you would agree. Let's look at one more example, or two more examples actually. Okay, I have to reload the page for some reason. Bear with me for just a second. Okay, so let's look up another um, large cap company, Broadcom. And again, their stock price is also peaking, and we see sort of a similar pattern. So small amounts of insider selling here and much larger insider selling in the more recent period. And so let's go to cumulative net shares traded. So again, similar. So 2.3 million shares sold up till September 2024, and then another basically 2 million shares sold in the period since then. So again, much more selling happening recently. So let's look up one more. Let's look up NVIDIA, and it's loading the graph. And again, so a similar pattern just like the other two. So stock price is peaking, and we see consistent insider selling happening in the years before, subsequent to 2020, and in the most recent year, approximately period, there is much heavier selling. So again, we can um, look at the cumulative net shares traded, and so we can see 6 million shares sold from the start of 2020 to May 2024, and then another 17 or 18 million shares sold since then. So again, much more selling in the subsequent year, in the most recent year, right as all these stock prices are peaking. So just briefly, if you are enjoying this, toss a like and hit subscribe, and if you want to help the channel or make sure you don't miss a video. And so I just leave you this. What do you think is going on? Why are insiders selling right now? This is just one indicator out of many, but it's an interesting signal. And so I would like to hear if you have any thoughts on why this is happening. All right, and see you next time.